If you or someone you love is doing this to make your guitars sound more stereo, this video will help. A lot of times when you talk about something creative like music, there's not really a wrong way to do something. However, what I'm going to show you in this video is absolutely the wrong way to get nice wide stereo guitars. After watching this, you'll be so glad that I saved you from this terrible fate that you might think to yourself, I wonder what else this guy could teach me. The best gift I can give to you is my 5-step mixing process. It'll save you time and frustration and have you getting better mixes faster than ever. Oh, and by the way, it's free. Just go to 5stepmix.com to get your free copy. First things first, it's not your fault. You hear songs that sound like this. And you think, wow, I wish my guitar sounded that wide. And so you set about and make it your mission to take your guitar and to make it sound that wide. Problem is you go about it in completely the wrong way and you don't realize it. In fact, the way a lot of people go around trying to make things sound wide, they end up ruining the tracks and even ruining the mix. How do I know? Because I fell into that trap once, and I hear a lot of home studio musicians falling into the same trap. So today is a public service announcement to hopefully get rid of this problem forever. The problem is you're confused as to what you're hearing. You hear big, wide guitars, and you think those guitars are in stereo. Not really. They're doubled, not stereo. That's where people get confused. So there's two ways to make something sound wide on a set of speakers or a set of headphones. You have a left channel and a right channel, right? So one of the ways to make a guitar sound wide is to record it with two microphones. One pan to the left ear, one pan to the right ear. And that gives you a wide sound. But it's not the width you just heard in that sample. It's a little bit wide. Sometimes it's nice and wide, but it's not the same as having two separate recordings of a guitar, putting one in the left channel and putting one in the right channel. Two completely different recordings gives you that massive width that you're looking for. That's called doubling. So while, yes, you're hearing a stereo mix, you're hearing the guitars coming out of the left and the right speaker, it's not taking one guitar and making it stereo. It's taking two guitars, two separate guitar parts, and panning them left and right to make it have nice width to it. So here's the big takeaway point. You might want to write this one down. Mono will never be stereo. A single guitar track recorded with a single microphone is by definition a mono signal. There's nothing we can do to change that. If we want something wide, we'll need multiple mono signals panned to different sides to achieve that width. And I can hear the comments happening already. Yes, there are tricks you can use to take a mono track and add a bit of stereo layer on top. I'll show you some of those tricks at the end of the video, but that's not what we're talking about here. Now, I want to demonstrate this for you so you can hear it for yourself. Here is a song I just recently mixed in Studio One. We're focusing in on this acoustic guitar track, and I've got a couple of tools to help us visually see what's going on. This is a phase meter. You'll see it kind of gives us a visualization of what's happening in the stereo field, and then this is just literally a button that lets me hit mono and make everything mono. Both of these are on our mix bus. So right now we're listening to this single acoustic guitar. Let me play that for you real quick. Now, this song came with one of these acoustic guitars. And I had a moment in the mix of thinking, it'd be cool to have this in stereo just to hear what it sounds like doubled. I didn't do that. Here's where people go wrong. They will say, I know what I want to do. And they'll take this guitar and they'll do this. I'm just going to show you. They'll take the guitar track, and it doesn't matter what DAW you're in. You can screw this up in any system. They will right-click on the track and they will duplicate the entire track. So now we have two copies of the same exact thing, right? And the first thing they'll do, remember, this is someone who's kind of on a journey of trying to figure out how to make their guitar sound wide. So the first thing they might do is say, well, I want to make two of them, and I'm going to pan the first one to the left and then the second one to the right. And that should give me stereo. And then they hit play. exactly the same. The only difference is it's louder because we added 2 copies of the same thing. But by panning one left and one right, if we listen to just the left one, okay, that's left, and then listen to just the right one, okay, we've got it in both left and right, but play them together, it's mono, because they're exactly the same. The same thing is coming out of the left and the right speaker, which is another definition of what mono is. The same thing coming out of both speakers. So attempt number 1 to make it stereo has failed. And then sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, well, I've heard people talk about like flipping polarity, and how if you flip polarity, it can sometimes make 2 tracks sound better together. So they'll take the second track and they'll do this number. So that flipped the polarity, so the direction the waveform is going, instead of going up, it's going down. So now we've got 2 things that are kind of opposite each other. That should give us some stereo width, right? They're panned left and right. Well, let's hear for ourselves. Okay, so that's definitely more stereo, right? We listen to it. Here is not flipped, and here's flipped. Yeah, it's got kind of this it's a little weird sounding, but it's got this kind of width to it. Neat, I made stereo. No, you didn't. Here's what you actually did. Listen to what happens when I listen to this in mono. So I'm going to zoom in on this button here. Listen to what happens when we listen to the entire mix in mono. Just listen. Here we go. Nothing. Audio is playing. There is signal coming through, and that signal is being completely canceled out because these are 2 exact opposites of each other, exact copies. One has the polarity flipped, which means you have complete frequency phase cancellation. So what does that mean? That means if we were to mix a song like this and we put it in with the entire mix like this, and then we listen to this mix on a mono system, which is, by the way, most systems we listen to music on, right? Those small little speakers, your car is a lot of times kind of mono. How it comes out of your phone is kind of mono. Let's listen to the whole mix in mono. The acoustic guitar literally completely disappeared in the mono mix because we tried to fake our way to stereo. So that's the extreme example, right? Where we take 2 of the same thing and flip the polarity. But you might say, no, Joe, I'm more sophisticated than that. I wouldn't flip the phase. I know that's wrong. Here's what I'd do. I would take it and just delay it a little bit. So I actually have a track already in here that's been delayed, so I can delete this one. And so this one I delayed. I just took the track and just dragged it over a little bit. So you can see here's where the beat is. I dragged it over a few milliseconds, right? No harm, no foul. This, without flipping the polarity button is off. This should give us a nice wide sound, right? Let's take a listen. Ooh, we listen to that and say, that is nice. I finally achieved it. Stereo. No, you didn't. Yes, you made it sound fake stereo, but what happens when we listen to that thing in mono? Check it out. A couple of gross things happened. First of all, it gets a lot quieter because most of it is being canceled out. So when we moved it in time, we created different moments of like being out of phase with itself. It's close enough to be similar, but it's far enough to cause some phase issues. And you'll notice if you look at the spectrum meter, down here is called the correlation meter. When this thing is to the right, everything is good. When it's to the left, it means something's out of phase between the left and the right speakers. And this thing is kind of living to the left when we do this weird phase or this weird delay trick. And the same, it's not as extreme as completely flipping the polarity, but listen to what happens whoops, I duplicated it. Listen to what happens in the entire mix when I've used that trick to make my guitars sound stereo. We'll listen in stereo, then I'll flip to mono, listen to what happens. That's a more real life example. The guitars didn't disappear entirely, but they almost disappeared. They are so hidden now that we almost don't hear them. And by the way, there's an electric piano that's playing that same rhythm. So if you thought you were hearing the guitars, you really weren't. The guitars all but disappeared in the middle when we listened in mono. And the question might be, Joe, why does it matter what it does in mono? Because that's a listening environment that most people will hear. Imagine this. You produce this song. It has an amazing wide stereo guitar thing. And some major TV show picks it up and decides to use it on their show. And you're listening on your TV, which just has a single speaker. And when your song comes on, you can't hear the guitars. Would you be appalled with your... Yes, you would. So my goal for you is to develop an ear for where when the guitars are out of phase like this, you can hear it. Or especially, I guess, when it's back in stereo. That sounds nice on first glance, but it's actually out of phase. I get the same. Sometimes I'll play it where it's like flip the polarity and out of phase, and people will say, "Oh, that sounds nice," and I'll have to say, "Nope, it doesn't." You got to develop an allergy to that because that will ruin your mixes. Okay, very quickly, I've got 3 tips to take a mono guitar and make it sound stereo. If perhaps in this instance I don't have 2 guitars to make into a double, I've got to deal with just the one. So since I'm not going to record another guitar because my job is to mix, here's one thing you can do. First thing is simple, and you probably guessed it already. Just add some reverb. So I'm going to take this guitar, I'm going to send it to this kind of room reverb that I have, and it's going to make it have some width to it. Now it sounds like you're playing your guitar in a fancy bathroom. What's not to love? Another tip, similar to the reverb, is to use some sort of stereo delay. And I like to use a stereo slapback delay sometimes. That can be really interesting. So I'm going to send this to, using a send, to a slapback delay. And the important thing is the main guitar is up the middle, and we're sending a copy of that to the slapback delay that's going to be set up in stereo. So it maintains a lot of mono compatibility because of that main guitar being in the middle. Let's see what that sounds like. So it's a little sloppy sounding on this, but when we flip it over to mono, the main guitar part is literally unchanged. We just hear the delays coming in and then going back out. That's the way to handle that. And trick number 3, this is actually what I did on this mix. For a section of the song, I took the main guitar track, I panned it to the right, then I used a send to send a copy of it to a delay pedal or delay plugin on the left, and had it set to something like an 1/8 note delay. This gives it the appearance of stereo without any of the phase issues because this one is delayed long enough to where there aren't going to be any phase problems. So here's what that sounded like. So just gave it a kiss of stereo-ness while it primarily being on the left or on the right. There was still a little bit of a tickle happening on the left, which helped balance out the mix a little bit. All right, that's it for this video. If you haven't seen my 13 rules of mixing video, it's actually a combination of 3 different videos I did that were really popular, so I combined them into one for your convenience. You can check it out right here. Thanks for watching. See ya.